Greetings fellow gamers, and welcome to this brand new installment of KnowledgeUp. Now, before any of my 15 viewers pointed out, I do realize that there is a pretty big gap between this episode and the last, and that is due to two reasons. First and foremost, school is starting, and with it comes the dread of any poor Venezuelan boy such as I, the period final exams. But most of all, I've been spending most of my time marathoning Markiplier playthroughs. I honestly don't know why. It's just his voice. It's so freaking smooth. La da 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 da. La da da. Like a ninja. Anyway, among the many FNAF and Yandere simulator videos, there was one particular game that caught my attention. Off, a French surreal adventure RPG made by Maurice Gauss in 2008, and then translated into English in 2011. Now, just in case you haven't previously heard or played the game, let me quickly get you up to speed. The protagonist is a character named the Batter, who sets out on a quest to purify the 4 zones that make up his world. This world is a dramatic one, populated by extremely timid, if not downright neurotic citizens, who are forced to work every day and are rewarded only in the form of sugar, which is later revealed to be the only thing keeping them sane. The people of the land are also victims of the attacks of specters, and it is these monsters that the hero is apparently keen on destroying. However, as you progress through the game, you begin questioning the true motives and objectives of the Batter, as backtracking reveals that the zones you have purified have become empty, completely devoid of life, color, heck, even sound. By the end of the game, well, it's not really clear what happens. It would require massive amounts of speculating to give you a concrete answer, as many mysteries remain unsolved. But what can be said for certain is that the Batter kills all 3 guardians that kept order and life in their respective zones, along with his wife, the queen, and his son, Hugo, before turning the whole game off, hence the title, and putting an absolute and definitive end to his own reality. Now, if that sounded dark, it's because it is. This game is very sad and in some parts even slightly disturbing, and the many interpretations of what really happens in the plot are not very jolly either. So it honestly surprised me when, looking through the comments, I saw how many people were drawing the comparison between this game and Undertale. Now, I do realize that these games share many similarities, in some cases very close ones too, like in the case of Sans and the Judge. It's even creepy to me how identical these characters and their stories are, downright to their names and appearance. You could also point out that both these games disregard the 4th wall in an almost rude manner, and they also both address the issue of a detached main character controlled by a superior entity whose only purpose is to grow stronger, overcome, and destroy. But at the same time, I had to ask myself, what does make these 2 games so different? I mean, let's be honest here. One is acclaimed as one of the best games of 2015, if not of all time, and the other is virtually ignored by most, only brought up when it's played by a big name, such as Markiplier here. Now again, there are several aspects in which these 2 games differ, but I would like to focus on the one that in my opinion is the most important and interesting: the storytelling. Oh, that's right, you read that title, didn't you? Now, when it comes to storytelling itself, it's kind of difficult to give it a concrete definition. I personally interpret it as the ability to effectively portray a specific setup, consisting of characters and locations. In other words, it's easy to come up with a brilliant idea for a story. Heck, I bet most of you have that one amazing story that you never actually got around to writing. And that's because it's an entirely different thing to actually sit down and write that story, word by word, sentence by sentence. You see, one of the general big goals of writing is to obtain an intended emotional reaction from the audience. But while the original concept might have had the potential to do so, in the actual writing some things tend to be lost due to common imperfections, and, in the end, the development of an idea just ends up devaluing it. To avoid these mistakes, it is important to keep two crucial aspects in mind: the final goal or end and the main focus of the story. That being said, let's analyze the game's storytelling. Off does a fantastic job building its world and atmosphere. I felt distraught and completely freaked out through most of Markiplier's gameplay. The enemies, the dialogues, heck, even the overworld sprites are quite creepy. I especially enjoyed the explanation of the world's organization and of the 5 fundamental elements that kept it together. And yet, I believe that Off commits a basic but crucial mistake in the telling of its story. But before addressing that, let's talk a little bit about Undertale, shall we? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's basically the only reason why most of you even clicked on this video in the first place. Now, in the case of Undertale, the world, well, it's not really that interesting or developed. Not at all, actually. Most of the areas are quite generic, and I believe this is even purposely addressed by Toby Fox in the form of their names. I mean, Hotland. Really breaking the mold on that one, Toby. Good job. The backstory of the game is also quite simple, to the point that it literally fits in the beginning sequence. There are 2 factions, humans and monsters. They eventually go to war because of the humans' greed for power and control. The former, which are stronger due to their determined souls, beat the monsters easily and seal them inside the underground with a barrier that can only be broken with the power of the souls of 7 humans. And that's pretty much it. And before I even begin talking about the overworld sprites, let's just take a look at the main character, shall we? What is that? And before anyone points out the obvious, I get that the intention was for it to be genderless and raceless, but jeez, its face and body are just straight up deformed. Now, me listing all of these flaws would lead you to believe that I hate Undertale's storytelling, right? Actually, the truth of the matter is that all of these quote-unquote mistakes don't really matter at all. Heck, I'm pretty sure Toby Fox was and is aware of them, but he doesn't really care, because in his eyes, these traits of his story are not even flaws at all, because he knew exactly what the focus of his game would be: characters. And oh my lordy lord, does Undertale got characters. And well, it's only natural, right? The whole point of the game is that the player gets to choose between saving or killing all the monsters in the underground. So it would seem obvious that the creator would try his very best to make every character as likable, unique, and memorable as possible. And it is interesting too to analyze how Toby Fox achieved this goal with flying colors. Through motivations. A good character, in my opinion, is one that defines himself through his likes and dislikes, and expresses them in a unique manner. This very pattern is followed by most, if not all, characters in Undertale. Let's take Papyrus as an example, one of the most beloved characters from this game. He never stops expressing what he likes, what he wants, what he aspires. He wants to capture a human, he wants to be part of the Royal Guard, he wants to be considered cool, he wants to have many friends, and so on. And yet, Papyrus doesn't come off at any point as selfish. Heck, on the contrary, even though he's always talking about his own goals, these objectives just make him the more lovable and interesting as a character. Alphys wants to be part of the main story. Ondan wants to be a hero and fight for everyone. Metaton wants to be a huge star, and the monsters in general just want freedom. While it's their original personalities and looks that make them stand out, I believe it's their motivations of these characters that make the player really feel toward them. And these motivations have to be clear, understandable, and relatable. Now, this doesn't mean that I also want to be part of the Royal Guard, of course, but who doesn't dream at one point of being a cool hero and being admired by everyone? Relatable doesn't necessarily mean realistic, as many of our own thoughts and desires are often irrational. In Undertale, the lack of a deep, intriguing, and mysterious backstory and of a complex, expanded world are, in the end, irrelevant, if not beneficial to the game, because that's not what the player is supposed to be thinking about. That is not the focus of the story. And here is where, in my opinion, Off drops the ball. You see, Off has what I like to refer to as Alice in Wonderland syndrome. A story so focused on showing the audience how weird and disturbing and strangely charming their world is that it forgets giving most characters any form of development. Let me give you an example. At the beginning of the story, you are introduced to the judge, a weird cat-like creature that serves as your guide throughout the start of the game. Now, his quirk seems to be that he talks in an extremely proper manner, and that's about it. Because even if his appearance and his personality might initially seem interesting, the creator doesn't give anything else to the player to work with. Most of the dialogue of the judge consists of tutorials and exposition, and when he's not vomiting necessary information, he's just spouting random nonsense. You see, there has to be a moment where you stop showing how unique and amazing your character is, and when you have to start giving him some actual motivations, goals, likes, dislikes. Because if you don't, you risk an absolute emotional detachment from the character by the audience. And this is exactly what happens in Off. At one point in the game, the creator does give the judge a relatable trait, showing that he cares for his brother. But it was so rushed and last moment that when it is later revealed that the brother has been killed, and when I found the judge crying for this very reason, I felt nothing. Heck, even Markiplier's reaction is a bit underwhelming. He states that it's one of the saddest scenes he has ever seen, but he barely sheds a tear. And let's remember something, folks, this is Markiplier we're talking here. Now, this is not to say that Off is a bad game or story. In fact, it would be absolutely ridiculous to even imply that. The building of the world and atmosphere, as stated before, are amazing. The soundtrack is damn near perfect, and the mysteries surrounding every character, especially the protagonist, are incredibly intriguing. But for me, personally, the story lacks something. That thing that Undertale has in excessive amounts. That emotional connection that drives me to be invested in the game, in its story, and in its characters. But hey, that's just me. At the end of the day, my true intention with this video is to begin an interesting conversation, so I would like both Off and Undertale fans to leave their opinions in the comments. Do you think that Off does indeed lack something in its storytelling? Or maybe you think it's Undertale that lacks the intrigue and suspense that Off was able to masterfully build? Or maybe you have something completely different to add to the conversation. Either way, any and all points of view are completely welcome. For now, thank you so much for watching, and remember to keep your knowledge up.